This Epstein story just will not die, despite the absolute best attempts from Trump to kill it. Now he's calling in the big guns, no pun intended. He is tapping into the Manosphere. By now, Trump's lackeys at Fox News have taken the not-so-subtle hint to stop talking about Jeffrey Epstein. Greg Gutfeld was saying on his show that the Democrats don't even really care about the Epstein files. They never really cared about the victims of sex trafficking or child sex trafficking. The Republicans are the ones that always cared about those things, not the Democrats. The Democrats only care about getting the Republicans and getting Trump. And now that it's been reported that Trump's name is in the Epstein files, Democrats finally care about the Epstein files.
They see an opening exploiting the MAGA rift around Epstein. And I get it. They have no policies. Epstein is the only hope they have. Before this, all they had was supporting men who shave their nutsacks in women's locker rooms. We're supposed to focus entirely on Epstein? Sure, if a list of organized child rapists at high levels exists, that is huge. But remember, while you were caring about that, the Dems weren't. But now that it's a political issue, they do. And sure, the DOJ isn't perfect. If it were, they'd call it the Department of Sydney Sweeney.
Democrats care about things like sex trafficking, of course. We care so much about it that even if the Clintons get implicated in the Epstein files, I wouldn't expect that most people on the left, at least not the progressive left, would suddenly start to make excuses for them. It's not release the Epstein files, but only if it's the Republicans. It's just release the Epstein files. The Republicans also say release the Epstein files, but not because they want to implicate guilty parties regardless of political affiliation, but because they only expect Democrats to be on the list. Despite the fact that this one issue has defined them as a group for so long, once evidence came out implicating Trump with Epstein, meaning more evidence that had already been available for years, many of them were unsurprisingly incredibly fickle and unprincipled when it came to one of their own core beliefs. But many of them is not enough of them because the story is still out there. And one of the reasons as to why that is because people like Joe Rogan keep talking about it. As long as Joe Rogan is upset about the Trump administration refusing to release the unredacted Epstein files, then his millions of listeners are also upset about it, or at least they're thinking about it.
Donald Trump is having by far the worst month of his second term. And also when it comes to what Reverend Sharpton was just talking about, the way that his own base's anger at him has dragged down his agenda in a fundamentally different way than years past. It's also one of the worst months we've seen since he's ever been president, both terms. We can measure that. And that's what makes this a more politically dangerous moment. And I'm going to show you exactly why. We have these prominent MAGA voices. Some are in the Republican Party, some are on Fox News, but more than ever before and the first term, which was many light years ago in terms of technology, we have more independent voices online, which means they're less beholden to some of these other things. That's true regardless of ideology. And so it goes beyond Epstein. In the past weeks and months, some of those voices who are MAGA and voted for Trump and have audiences that they've said are very Trumpified are not just criticizing this or that policy. They're using that same smashing rhetoric that Trump and MAGA folks tend to use against him.
And then they're kicking students out that write articles they don't like.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Isn't a university supposed to be a place where someone's allowed to express themselves and have
non-violently?
Yeah. Deporting people because you don't like who they're criticizing? That gets kind of shifty. You got to get scared that people who are not criminals are getting lassoed up and deported. It's horrific.
I don't know how many of you guys are invested in crypto or stocks. What the is going on with our country? Guys, why am I poor?
Everything's in the shitter because of it. I'm down $7 million in stocks and crypto. Maybe don't be on the golf course.
3 times I voted for this man. This is by far the biggest fumble of the administration they've had thus far.
It's indefensible. It's indefensible that the answers aren't there when so much was promised.
So how does Trump get someone like Joe Rogan to stop talking about it? Well, according to reports, Vice President J.D. Vance hosted a dinner at his place Wednesday night to discuss how the Trump administration would move forward regarding the Epstein saga, and part of that plan is to somehow convince Rogan to change his tune on the files. They're also considering releasing audio from an interview with Ghislaine Maxwell, but with all of the reports that they've already tampered with the evidence that they have released so far, will these tapes even be worthwhile? CNN has reported that the Justice Department is currently working to digitize, transcribe, and yes, redact over 10 hours of audio from the interview. Also, we know that the administration has shown Maxwell an exorbitant amount of favor since her meeting with Trump's former lawyer and current U.S. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Blanche is said to have been at the dinner with Vance, along with White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and FBI Director Kash Patel. And as part of a unified front, the team needs to get on message and then stay there. They have floated the idea of either doing a press conference to address the files or to just go on Rogan's show, which I guess is the same thing these days. Trump has had success with tapping into the Manosphere in the past. He made a series of podcast appearances prior to the 2024 election as part of his campaign, a move that many attribute to his overall victory. He was able to capture a large swath of Gen Z voters by going on shows where no one would ask him intelligent questions about policies, ideologies, or whatever. The thing that Jimmy Fallon nearly got bullied off the air for doing was the same thing that Gen Z was now praising these podcasters for doing. They managed to humanize someone like Donald Trump. And of course, Donald Trump is a human being. No one's saying that he's not, but he's also a symbol. He's not just some dude. This is the old adage of wanting to have a beer with your president. People want to feel like whoever is leading them is on their level. They want to feel as though they identify with the president, but also that the president identifies with them. Kamala Harris did not appeal to this particular demographic. She was never going to. No one wants to have a beer with Kamala Harris. The difference is that, people like me on the left, I never wanted to or needed to. That's never a thing that I wanted from my leaders in government in general. I don't even care if my leaders are likable or charismatic. It helps, sure, but only if it's backed up by confidence and experience. I just want people in government who can do their jobs effectively, and I don't know why that's so much to ask. But in a democracy, the reality is that our elections are popularity contests. They're not necessarily merit-based. They are based on name recognition. That's why candidates spend so much money on advertising, on just getting their names and faces out there. They're based on viral moments and clickbaity headlines. Going on Dateline to discuss policy isn't enough to win an election these days. But getting Andrew Schultz to laugh with you apparently does help. Speaking of Schultz, which I don't love to do, he and others in the so-called Manosphere have been speaking out about how betrayed they feel by Trump and his administration and his policies and the execution of those policies. They take no personal responsibility for pushing their less than fully developed political ideologies on their audiences, and they don't understand that they were duped by a man who has been a known and demonstrated con artist for decades. I've never seen any of these comedians as being particularly insightful or intelligent, but they really see themselves that way, and they've been able to market themselves to their audiences as such. To me, I didn't find them very funny, but I just figured they weren't for me. They weren't comedians that I would identify with anyway, but they also reek of mediocrity. But I imagine that that's a big part of what makes them so popular. They're relatable, right? The rise of Andrew Schultz in particular feels like one of those moments where you didn't like someone, but everyone else did, and they said that you were being a hater, and now all of those people are finally starting to see what you saw years ago. And it's not as satisfying as you think, and I know he still has a ton of fanboys, but at least now he is getting called out for either his hypocrisy or just the fact that he was never that funny or witty to begin with. However you feel about any of these guys, whether or not their particular brand of comedy is for you or not, and maybe it's not for you, they're getting called out now by some veterans in the industry, specifically Bill Burr and Mark Maron. Their overall criticism surrounds the fact that these guys just continually punch down while attempting to be the victim in the political sphere. They rail against woke culture because they don't like that they can't say what they want to say while having some of the biggest podcast audiences in the country. And no one is arresting them for the things that they're saying. They have free speech. They can say whatever they want. It doesn't mean, though, that people have to like them or respect them for the things that they say. All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks.